All right, everybody, welcome back to our Q&A. And in this episode, we're going to kind of explain Daniel chapter 9, verse 25, and its link to Palm Sunday. And this kind of falls back on one of those ways that we can prove that the Bible, the origin of information, comes from outside our dimensions of space and time, and I'll show you how. And so let's look at Daniel chapter 9, verse 25. And here's that verse where it says, "Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the command to restore and build Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince, there shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. The street shall be built again, and the wall, even in troublesome times." And so this verse is part of Daniel's 70 weeks prophecy located in Daniel chapter 9. And it is crucial for understanding God's prophetic timeline. A literal interpretation, particularly from the dispensational premillennial viewpoint, of which I hold, will see this as a precise prophecy foretelling the coming of Jesus Christ and the future tribulation period. All right, so from the going forth of the command to restore and build Jerusalem. Let's take a look at this. This marks the starting point of the prophecy. And so the decree that's referenced here is widely identified as the one that's given by Artaxerxes to Nehemiah in 444 BC. And that happens in Nehemiah chapter 2, verses 1 through 8. This decree specifically authorized the rebuilding of Jerusalem's walls, unlike the earlier decrees that focused on the temple, such as Cyrus' decree in 538 BC. And so it has some historical verification because Artaxerxes' 20th year was in 444 BC. This is confirmed by Persian historical records and the biblical account. And the prophecy, therefore, begins in the month of Nisan, which is March and April in 444 BC. Until Messiah the Prince, this portion of the prophecy will foretell the exact time when the Messiah, Jesus Christ, would appear. And the timeline is divided into 2 periods, 7 weeks of years, so 49 years. This likely refers to the rebuilding of Jerusalem after the decree. And the 62 weeks, which is the 434 years. This extends to the arrival of the Messiah. Adding these two together gives us 69 weeks of years, which means 483 years, 69 times 7. And so using the prophetic year of 360 days, this gives us a total of 173,880 days. So to calculate the fulfillment from March 5th, 444 BC, the decree of Artaxerxes to rebuild Jerusalem and the walls, and you add 173,880 days, it would bring us to March 29th, 33 AD. This is the date of Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday, and this is the exact fulfillment of Daniel's prophecy, proving that Jesus is the prophesied Messiah. And so this mathematical precision confirms the divine nature of biblical prophecy, and this is just one of many. And it says, "The street shall be built again, and the wall even in troublesome times." And this is going to refer to the building of Jerusalem under Nehemiah. And that was met with strong opposition from the surrounding nations, and it's found in Nehemiah chapter 4, verses 1 through 23. So despite the threats and obstacles, the work was completed, fulfilling this aspect of the prophecy. And so let's look at a dispensational understanding of the 70 weeks. A dispensational interpretation will see Daniel chapter 9 verse 25 as part of a broader prophecy which leads to Christ's first coming, which was fulfilled in the first 69 weeks, a prophetic gap known as the church age, and then the final 70th week, 7 years, is yet to come. That's what Revelation is all about, those 7 years. And so the future tribulation period, which is talked about in Daniel chapter 9 verse 27, is the last 7 years will be fulfilled during the Great Tribulation, which occurs before Christ's second coming. And then we see Jesus as Messiah the Prince. This is going to confirm Jesus as the Messiah as prophesied in the Old Testament, because he entered Jerusalem on Palm Sunday exactly as predicted in Zechariah chapter 9 verse 9. The Jews were expecting a political king, but Jesus came as a suffering Messiah first, as Isaiah 53 tells us. And because Israel rejects him, the prophetic clock paused at the end of the 69th week, leaving the 7 years. And that's what Revelation is all about. And so let's talk about the church age and that prophetic gap. So after Jesus' crucifixion, the church age began. That's in Acts chapter 2. Daniel's 70th week is still future. This is that tribulation period that's described in Revelation. And so a Baptist will hold that this period will restart when the Antichrist will confirm a covenant with Israel in Daniel chapter 9 verse 27. And so Daniel chapter 9 verse 25 provides one of the clearest biblical proofs of Jesus' identity as the Messiah, because it precisely predicted the time of Christ's arrival, it confirmed the divine authorship of Scripture, and it laid the foundation for the end times timeline, including the rapture and the tribulation. So from a dispensational perspective, this passage is key to biblical eschatology. It shows how God's timeline for Israel and the church unfolds in history. Palm Sunday in 33 AD would have likely occurred on March 29th based on historical reconstructions of the Jewish calendar and the timing of Passover that year. And that's based on the assumption that Jesus was crucified on Friday, April 3rd, 33 AD, Nisan the 14th on the Jewish calendar. And this is one of the most widely accepted dates for the crucifixion. Palm Sunday, occurring the Sunday before, would have been March 29th, 33 AD. And so 33 AD, and you subtract 476 years, would bring us to 444 BC. And if you adjust for leap years, that estimated date would fall around March 5th, 444 BC. And so this aligns with the prophetic timeline of Daniel chapter 9 verse 25, which predicts 173,880 days, or 69 prophetic weeks of years, from the decree to rebuild Jerusalem, which was historically given by Artaxerxes in 444 BC, to the coming of the Messiah on Palm Sunday, 33 AD. And so the decree of Artaxerxes in 444 BC is one of the most significant historical and biblical events tied to the prophecy in Daniel chapter 9, which will predict the coming of the Messiah. And so here's the historical and biblical evidence supporting that decree as the starting point of Daniel's 70-week prophecy. One, biblical evidence. You have Nehemiah's commission. The key biblical passage is Nehemiah chapter 2, verses 1 through 8, where Artaxerxes grants Nehemiah permission to return to Jerusalem and rebuild the city's walls. This event occurred in the 20th year of Artaxerxes' reign, which says, "And it came to pass in the month of Nisan, in the 20th year of King Artaxerxes, when wine was before him, that I took the wine and gave it to the king. Now I had never been sad in his presence before." Nehemiah chapter 2, verse 1. And so Nehemiah requests permission to return and rebuild Jerusalem. Artaxerxes will grant that request and provide letters for safe passage and timber for the reconstruction. And then Nehemiah arrives in Jerusalem and oversees the rebuilding of the walls of Jerusalem. And so then we have historical evidence. Artaxerxes' reign and date of 444 BC. So Artaxerxes Longimanus, he ruled the Persian Empire from 465 BC to 424 BC. All right, and his 20th year would fall on 444 BC. Right, 465 minus 20 years is 444. And so the decree to rebuild Jerusalem was issued in the month of Nisan, March and April. And so this decree specifically permitted the rebuilding of Jerusalem's walls, unlike previous Persian decrees which only allowed the temple to be rebuilt. Cyrus in 538 BC and Darius in 520 BC. Then you have the archaeological and secular confirmation, because the Persian records will confirm that Artaxerxes ruled from 465 BC, which aligns with the biblical timeline. The papyri, a set of Jewish documents from the Persian period, confirms the rule of Artaxerxes and the Jewish presence in the Persian-controlled Jerusalem, the Elephantine papyri. And then the lunar calendar synchronization will help confirm that Nisan the 1st, 444 BC, fell on March 5th, 444 BC. Then we have our prophetic significance. Daniel chapter 9 verse 25 predicts 69 prophetic weeks, or 173,880 days from this decree to the Messiah. Right? It says, "Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the command to restore and build Jerusalem until the Messiah the Prince, there shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks." And so in March 5th, 444 BC, that's Artaxerxes' decree, plus that 173,880 days, 69 weeks of years, comes all the way down exactly to March 29th, 33 AD, which was Palm Sunday when Jesus entered Jerusalem as king. So this exact timeline aligns with Jesus' triumphal entry, and that fulfills Zechariah. And so that decree of Artaxerxes in 444 BC is well documented in the Bible, and it's confirmed by historical sources. It serves as the starting point of Daniel's prophecy, leading precisely to Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem in 33 AD. And it's one of the strongest proofs of biblical prophecy aligning with historical records. And I can already hear people saying right now, well, they must have edited it in later. Well, that'd be interesting, but it was already translated into the Septuagint at 290 BC. So even you late date setters have really hard issues with that argument. So on Palm Sunday, March 29th, 33 AD, when Jesus rode into Jerusalem on a donkey, he made a significant statement that directly connects to Daniel chapter 9 verse 25 and the prophecy of the Messiah's arrival. Jesus declares the time has been fulfilled, because in Luke 19 verse 41 through 44, as Jesus approached Jerusalem, he wept over the city and said, "If you had known, even you, especially in this your day, the things that make for your peace, but now they are hidden from your eyes." And so Jesus emphasized this your day, and he's pointing to a specific preordained time. Daniel chapter 9 verse 25 predicted that from the decree to rebuild Jerusalem in 444 BC until the Messiah, there'd be exactly 173,880 days, or 483 prophetic years. The fulfillment of that prophecy landed exactly on Palm Sunday in 33 AD, which was the day Jesus rode into Jerusalem. Jesus was revealing that this was the precise day prophesied for the Messiah's arrival. And then Jesus rebukes the Jews for missing the prophecy. Continuing in Luke chapter 9, Jesus says, or Luke chapter 19, Jesus says, "For days will come upon you when your enemies will build an embankment around you, surround you and close you in on every side, and level you and your children within you to the ground. And they will not leave in you one stone upon another, because you did not know the time of your visitation." And so that time of your visitation, Jesus was pointing to the fact that Daniel chapter 9 verse 25 had clearly revealed when the Messiah would come down to the day, yet Israel still rejected him. Because they failed to recognize that prophecy, judgment was going to come. And that was fulfilled in 70 AD when the Romans completely sacked and leveled Jerusalem. And so we see the triumphal entry is a prophetic fulfillment. Jesus' entry into Jerusalem on a donkey was a fulfillment of Zechariah chapter 9 verse 9, which says, "Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Shout, O daughter of Jerusalem. Behold, your king is coming to you. He is just and having salvation, lowly and riding on a donkey, a colt, the foal of a donkey." And so the people shouted Hosanna in Matthew chapter 21 verse 9, recognizing him as the son of David, but they expected a conquering king, not a suffering Messiah. So on Palm Sunday, Jesus explicitly referenced the fulfillment of Daniel chapter 9 verse 25. He expected them to understand and know prophecy. And I say to a lot of people that for every prophecy to Jesus' first coming, there's about 8 to his second. And so God expects us to take prophecy quite seriously and literally. And so this your day in Luke 19, Jesus confirmed the prophecy was being fulfilled that very day. And you did not know the time of your visitation in Luke 19. He's rebuking Israel for failing to recognize that prophecy. And judgment was prophesied for their rejection. which was done in 70 AD, the destruction of Jerusalem. And so from a dispensational perspective, this will reinforce that God's prophetic calendar is quite precise, and it affirms Jesus as the prophesied Messiah of Daniel chapter 9, verse 25. And you can find more study material at TaylorBibleStudy.com.